All right, welcome everybody to the comic panel. I'm Cody.
I'm Talon.
I'm Shawenta.
And today we are covering History, written and drawn by Hitoshe Iwaaki. And yeah, this is the first in our theme of Greco-Roman historical comics.
Mm-hmm. Or just any kind of comics.
Yeah. I guess it could be contemporary also. So just Greco-Roman. And yeah, this history is spelled not with a Y at the end, but with an IE. And it is a manga, a historical manga. It follows, this is one of those names where I'm like, Eumenes? Okay, yeah. Eumenes.
Sure, it's pronounced differently, but that's how I kept pronouncing it.
Okay.
I think I would pronounce or emphasize the second E, so it's like Eumenes.
Eumenes.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see how as we go on, my brain decides to land on it.
So yeah, he's like an actual historical figure, but very little is known about him. So this is very much historical fiction, sort of.
Interesting. I did not know that.
There's sections that are technically from his diary. I'm a little dubious about that part. I didn't look it up.
Yeah. But yeah, this has won a few awards. It is the grand prize of the 14th Japan Media Arts Festival, as well as the 16th Tezuka Osamu Cultural Prize in 2012.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, Tezuka is the godfather of manga and creator of Astro Boy.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I probably would have heard that from that.
This series originally started being released in 2003 and started being collected into volumes in 2004 and is still ongoing, actually.
Really?
Although it's on hiatus, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think in 2022, so last year, it started its hiatus. But the creator, the writer, he did say that he intends on finishing it, which like, I mean, honestly, it's like, it seems like finishing it, like, I don't know, with other fictional things, it's kind of like, oh, you could just keep going, you know, new adventures, new stuff. But I'm like, I don't know, he's already...
You know how the character dies.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's in sight. You can just do it.
Yeah.
Just make it happen.
Yeah, all these stories happen within the span of 1 year. You know, just one day after the next.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think I kind of read a little bit ahead on the Wikipedia page that, like, you know, in the current volumes, he's like an adult and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I don't think we actually mentioned that the character, you know, the historical figure this is based on was secretary to Alexander the Great.
Yes.
We did not mention that, but yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Military dude. Section, so we read chapters 7 to 19, which is the end of volume 1 and all of volume 2.
Yes.
And the reason I chose that is because that's what I accidentally read the first time.
Oh.
And I like it way better than when starting at the beginning.
Fair enough.
So the beginning starts off, the beginning of the actual series. You see Eumenes as an adult.
Oh.
And he meets like Aristotle, and they talk about like the theory of the Earth being round. That's why volume 1's called Globe.
Gotcha.
And eventually he goes back to his hometown. Eumenes goes back to his hometown and reminisces on kind of where it all started, where his life changed, because he grew up in a relatively wealthy family until some things happened, which we'll get into.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I did want to say that to talk a little bit about Hitoshe Iwaaki. So he got his start in 1984 he was inspired. It's apt that he won the Tezuka Award because he read a lot of his manga in high school, and that's what inspired him to begin drawing himself. But yeah, he became an assistant in 1984, and then in 1985, he did a short story that won the Newcomer Award. And that's, I've read and heard a few times, that's a very common entrance into manga, is that an internal company, competition, basically.
Okay.
Where you just like, it's kind of like, it's basically like submit your pitches, but they're like, but it's a contest, and sometimes it's also opened up to the public too, if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you feel like your chops are good enough. But yeah, so he entered his short story in 1985, won that award, and then he's been working for Kodansha since then, mostly in Afternoon Magazine. And then in 1993, he it says that he received the manga award for Parasite, so I assume that he probably started the manga before 1993.
So
1990 is
Parasite.
when.
Yes.
But yes, yeah, Parasite is very well known, has a well-known anime adaptation as well.
It has a live action, I'm pretty sure, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, live action movie or something. Or TV show, I can't remember.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I am also... did you use the word dubious to that information? I was not privy to that.
Yeah, you were not privy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you can't doubt the information.
Yeah.
I'm not
Real.
doubt. Is that what dubious means?
Yes, yeah.
That you doubt?
Yeah, because I
Taylon, you're like, yeah, dude.
I thought it just meant that you didn't know.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I doubt.
Actually, I thought dubious just meant like, cunning, or like I'm seeing,
Are you talking about devious?
Oh yeah. Yes, I am. Interesting. Fascinating. Words.
Okay. This is great.
Yeah, this is great. Anyway.
I really, it's funny he did Parasite, because that's definitely one that I have on my list. And I was like, I gotta get around to it because it's so famous. It's supposedly a really good horror manga.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's the one who did it, I'm even more like, oh my gosh, I gotta give it a try now.
Yeah, I would really like to read it also. I really enjoyed the anime adaptation. And so I'm like, ooh, that could be interesting, it is interesting too that like just on his Wikipedia bio, it's almost like I've heard of Parasite. I had not heard of History and had no just no information about it. So it's interesting that on here it's like, yeah, Parasite and History, like that's the bigger thing that he worked on. I'm like, I don't think so, but okay. But yeah, that's pretty much he's worked on other things, but that is his two biggest works that I'm aware of. I don't know if you had anything else on him, Shwenta.
No.
Yeah.
The fact that I discovered the fact that he made Parasite.
Yeah.
Surprise.
But yeah. All right. So, now talk a little bit about what we read in specific, what happened.
Yeah. So the story opens up with Eumenes, or the part that we were reading starts off with him thinking about his hometown when he was younger. And so he starts off by recounting a recurring dream that he's having to his friend. And it's about this woman who's in the middle of a sword fight, and she is just slaying everybody. And he describes it as like she was dancing. Like that's how no one could touch her. Like, but the dream ends with her dying.
Right.
And so he has no idea why he's having these dreams, but it's like something that he continually thinks about. And so the story continues with Eumenes going home, and that's where we get introduced to his family. Or he's going home and having dinner with them.
Yeah.
His father, I pronounce it Hieronymus.
Mm-hmm.
He's described as this father that cares a lot about the standing of the family, as typical as men in those days.
Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty wealthy family. They have a lot to lose.
Yeah, exactly. And so he talks to them about their performance at school. And this is where we're also introduced to his brother. He and his brother are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother is also named after his father. So
Hieronymus the lower.
Yeah. Is that okay? And so Eumenes is a very studious person, or loves books, spends a lot of time in the library, but he's often found daydreaming in class. And so his principal notifies his father about that. And his father kind of gets on him. He's like, hey, you're doing this thing, you need to shape up. But he also honors his son by saying that, but you do have the best grades in the class. So, how much can I really be mad? And then his brother's like, what about me, Dad? And Hieronymus is just like, oh, yeah. The principal did mention you. You're slacking. Your grades are awful.
Yeah, just like your brother, but also not as good.
Well, no. His brother is best in the class.
Well, no, I know, but he was saying that the brother was daydreaming, and you were also daydreaming, but not doing good.
Yeah, fair enough. And but he tells his son Hieronymus, do something that you are the best than anybody at. All right. Then come talk to me.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Aw." But then
he's like the older brother.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit even more of an ego there. You're the one who's going to take on the family responsibility.
Right. And it's also during this time that we get introduced to his mother, who is, seen as caring, but also kind of wary about Eumenes talking to some sketchy people. It's like, I just want to make those are not good people. I don't know why you're talking to them. So,
I think that scene was supposed to show that Eumenes can relate to most people. He knows how to blend in, because he was just telling the rowdy soldiers some jokes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and making them laugh, even though they were annoyed earlier about getting low pay.
Yeah. That's good. I didn't think about that. But that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see this division between Eumenes and his brother kind of heightened with Hieronymus a little bit later in the story, where he goes to Eumenes and is talking to him after he got in a fight with his brother. And he says that Hieronymus, his son, is unreliable and pitiful. But you have a gift, you being Eumenes, have a gift that no one else has. And so you, with the help of Hecatus and Galatis, I want you to support your brother. I want you to help him. And he expresses kind of dissatisfaction, because he's like, it seems like if he had it his way, Eumenes would be inheriting everything while Hieronymus wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But Hieronymus, being the first son, inherits everything. And so that interaction between Hieronymus and Eumenes ends with Hieronymus saying, you didn't cry that time either. And that kind of rattles Eumenes, because he's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, when?
Right. So, what are you talking about?
Which time? I never cried. Right. No.
Just like you taught me. And so after dinner, he goes to his room and starts thinking back on that dream. And he describes the feeling that he gets from them as he feels lonely rather than uncomfortable. And this is where we find out that there's more to the dream than what he even told his friend. Turns out the dream ends with him seeing this woman's body being mutilated.
Mm-hmm.
And we're shown him in the bed dreaming this dream, and he's crying.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of contrasting with what he didn't cry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And So this is how his life is introduced, but all of this changed after he met a slave named Thrax. Thrax is described as a Scythian, a people thought to be the proudest, bravest, and cruelest people in the world.
Yeah. And are we supposed to understand that they are, like, essentially Norse?
I
don't know. That's kind of like what I felt like. I didn't think to look it up.
Based on what?
I don't know. I guess something. I guess I should look up Scythian, but I thought something in the text said that, and
I mean, they described him as a barbarian.
Yeah, a nomadic people. Oh, okay. So yeah, I was totally off. Originally of Iranian stock.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Known to, or who migrated westward from Central Asia to southern Russia and Ukraine in the 8th and 7th centuries BCE. Okay.
I mean, the characters in the story are mostly Greek.
Yeah.
And they're just, their slaves are going to be people from other groups.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they'll
true.
be like, these are barbarians. That's why they're slaves.
No,
That's
totally.
That's fair.
Yeah, I guess it was probably something about them being like the toughest of all, and I've generally heard that from different stories with like enslavement of Norse people, basically.
Okay.
Kind of like these ones are really strong and hardy and
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think I just like kind of transposed those stories onto this.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, that's where they must be from.
Yeah. I mean, what else could they be?
Yeah. But yeah.
So Thrax is first seen being pushed around by his master, but over time he's seen as having more and more freedom, little by little. And one day
his master is like really, I think he's the son of a debt collector. Or he's a debt collector himself.
Yeah, I think I thought it was the debt collector.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of
interchanged. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, he's really cruel to him. And even, the people in the town are like, you probably shouldn't be beating him up that much. He's like, hey, he's a slave. He's got to learn his place.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, the son is the crueler one. The older man is not as, but he also looks the other way and lets it happen. So.
Yeah. And so is everybody else in the town. He's like, they're just a slave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're willing to talk about the person who's doing it. Like,
right, yeah.
But we're not going to actually do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would require social upheaval.
Right. And so one day his master finally takes off his chains and he celebrates his freedom by killing all of them. And he is so excited. And this starts his one-man war again, trying to get out of Dodge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says he wants to go home.
You're right. Yeah. And so he kills his son, his master's son, and every single soldier in the town try to stop him, and he just kills all of them.
Yeah.
This war brings him to the same location that Eumenes is at that day. And Eumenes is just looking at him, and he is just slaying all these guys. I mean, it was like, he was mesmerized, and he was like, wow, it's like he's dancing. And just completely mesmerized by the way that this guy was just moving. But too mesmerized, because then one of the soldiers grabs him and uses him as a shield. I mean, to be fair, Thrax does grab a small little girl and uses her as a shield. That does happen. But Thrax responds to this by just walking up to the guy. The guy's frantic. He's got the sword. He's swinging and missing. And Thrax just grabs the blade and uses his own blade to slice the guy's throat right above Eumenes' head. Blood dripping all down, and Eumenes was just kind of like in shock. I was like, what just happened? And then reinforcements come in, and we earlier in the book we see Thrax's master going to Hieronymus and saying, hey, we need more troops, and so that's what these guys are. And so Thrax runs away.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, Eumenes kind of just was like, okay, time to clean up. Seemingly a little unshaken by what just transpired. And he then continues he was there that day because he was looking for his friend, and so he continues that search. And he comes across soldiers who are kind of guarding an alley, and they're saying, "No, you can't be here. Turn back." And so he turns around, but kind of defies them by like trying to go the same way, but through a different alley. And he comes across all these dead soldiers, and a few, yards away, a distance away, he sees Thrax's body dead, and it's been slain. And so he's like, okay. He runs back home, tells Hecatus, which is, would you say, like an advisor to Hieronymus?
Yeah, he's like, he's an employee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're steward of the finances, because they describe him as a steward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, so his response to Eumenes telling him, yeah, the slave that was hacking and slashing everyone is dead. It was like, I know just what to do.
Yeah, because right now his dad and a bunch of other high-profile members of the community are meeting about how to deal with him too. So it's like, it's good. We're good now.
Yeah, but it was kind of sus.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so later that night, Eumenes comes out to, goes outside and sees his father dead. And he sees Hecatus and Gelidus.
Yeah, who is like a member of his security.
Yeah. I thought he was like a military advisor or something like that, but security might be more accurate. And he also sees Thrax's body lying just a few feet away. And Hecatus turns to Eumenes and says to him, "Thrax followed you here and killed your father." Which, if you're a reader, is utter BS.
Yeah.
That is clearly a lie.
Mm-hmm. Eumenes knows too.
Yes. Eumenes knows as well.
Yeah.
But that moment is when his entire world changed. There was a funeral. He was crying. His brother was crying. His mother was crying. Everyone who knew Hieronymus was in mourning. And in the midst of this grief, there's a trial. And the trial is to determine what happened. How did Hieronymus die?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, Eumenes, accuses the other guy.
Hecatus, thank
you.
Yeah, and Gelidus is there too.
Yeah. I think, they're like, for some reason, Hecatus is like, we're going to just say that you're sick right now to Gelidus, so you don't have to show up.
Yeah. And if you play our cards right, he won't be able to overpower us with his wit. And so, so he claims that he's lying. And so Hecatus's only card to play is like, this is the truth. But you know why he's saying this? Is because he's actually sympathetic to the Scythian. Because he isn't even Hieronymus' child. He's a Scythian. And Eumenes just whole body just fell into a daze, right? He's like, I can't believe what just happened. And this is the first time he is hearing that he is not Hieronymus' son. And you imagine he's shuddering and his life flashes before him at that moment, and little memories that line up with the cultural understanding of what a Scythian was. The bravest, proudest, and cruelest. And so all those moments was lined up. And he says it as, I knew it. Because he always felt like there was something different.
Yeah.
And his father even acknowledged it. You have a gift that no one else has. So he gets out of his daze and continues to, fight for the truth that he's lying. But by that time it was too late. The court already decided in Hecatus' favor. And Hecatus actually said, see, he's not even his son. He is just a slave. And in that moment, he is a slave now. He was living as a son in a wealthy family, and now he is down to being a slave.
Yeah, owned by the city.
Owned by the city, exactly. And if I understand this right, he's trapped in a dark room for several days? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I believe, he does have some just solitary time.
Yeah. And so he
pretty much like, as long as you're kept safe and you don't get hurt before we sell you, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so he emerges from that dark room, no longer Eumenes, son of Hieronymus, Eumenes, the Scythian slave, and he is treated as such. His adoptive mother doesn't even look at him. She turns when he's in the room. His brother doesn't even treat him as someone who once was his brother. He treats him like a slave, doesn't even act like he had a brother at one point. Mm-hmm. And then not only that, the other slaves treat him with no respect. Because apparently, slaves don't treat each other with respect. They respect their masters, Yeah. But the slaves, they just sort of like, you're trash as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe we had to respect you previously.
Yeah. And it seems, and one of the slaves, Charon, I think is how you...
Yeah.
He knew.
Yeah.
He knew that Eumenes was not his actual child. But he was like, well, I was told to play along, so I played along.
Yeah.
And so Eumenes, the only kindness that is shown to him is him being a slave owned by the city and not owned by an individual person, so they have to keep his monetary value so that he can be sold off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he gets a cold, then he's less valuable.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, Eumenes has always been shown as very, he loves scrolls, books, that sort of thing. And he took a lot of inspiration from the stories like Odysseus. He really liked how Odysseus would use his, I think he said ingenuity. And so he kind of takes inspiration, even though he was feeling very low, being mistreated and being kicked around and disrespected. And he figures out, using the fact that they need to upkeep his value to get some blankets and something to sleep on instead of sleeping in the cold. And then, even some of the servants taking pity on him, where they're willing to give him some scrolls from the library that he otherwise wouldn't be allowed to touch.
Yeah.
It's a little side secret.
Mm-hmm. And he describes that time of his life as he couldn't make it as a barbarian in a Greek world, and he felt so drained. And so, like you were saying, Shuenta, there were some acts of kindness, like giving him the scroll, him being able to use his position to get something. Charon, treats, like he was sent to Charon's room as that's where you can sleep, and Charon comes in and he's like, no, you're sleeping in the corner. And he's like, okay. And he's like, can I get a blanket? And Charon's like, no.
This is my blanket.
Yes.
I'm the only one.
Yeah.
Well, he says, do you know how many years it took for me to earn this stuff, and you just want to waltz in here and have it handed to you? Mm-hmm. What have you done?
Yeah. Almost like, you're still a little elevated here.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Even Charon hears Eumenes crying, and he's like, shut up. Stop crying. I'm trying to go to sleep.
Yeah, I have to wake up early tomorrow.
Yeah. It's just so awful. But later that night, Charon actually puts the blanket on him, so it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And he's given scrolls, like you said, Shuenta. And then one of the last acts of kindness displayed in the story is Charon telling Eumenes where he comes from, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so he recounts the story of what happened that led him to be adopted by Hieronymus. And so we see the Greeks are going out throughout all the land, I guess, collecting people to be slaves. Mm-hmm. And they come across a family of Scythians, 2 men, a woman, and a child. And so their plan is to take the woman and the child as slaves and kill the men. And so as they're killing the men, the woman takes the child, puts him in their luggage. And when she sees that the men are dead, she gets a smile on her face and starts hacking and slashing, right? And she's moving.
We should clarify that her smile is not like she's pleased.
Well, she's finally, a fight.
I don't think that's it. It's the kind of gritting your teeth of I don't know. It's just not. It's not happiness.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, she's just like you said, gritting her teeth. I'm time to take revenge.
Yeah.
And so she's cutting these guys down, and, she's graceful, dancing, and in case we haven't mentioned it before, I don't think we did, I think that's the point in time when Eumenes realizes the woman in his dreams was his mother, and they were memories.
Yeah.
And so she's killed, and the survivors take Eumenes back to Hieronymus, and they're like, we found this Scythian child, what should we do? And Hieronymus looks at this child and he's like, this child isn't crying. We need to go see his mother. And Sherman's like, I was against that. I mean, no one deserves to see their mother killed, you know.
Like not just killed, but like chopped up.
Yeah, mutilated, right? But he does it, and the child doesn't cry. Mm-hmm. And Hieronymus is like, this child is a hero. He has the hero's heart. He is going to be our protector one day. So I'm going to adopt him. And, hey, he found a father who was, part of the people who killed his mother.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the fact that it was just a raid because they're like, we need more slaves.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't even like they were threatened.
Yeah.
No. And so Charon gives his kind of perspective in why he thinks that Eumenes didn't cry, and that it was a form of protection, like self-preservation, because he must, he thinks the child, you must have recognized that if you showed any emotion, you would be seen as sympathetic to this woman, that this woman was close to you. And by not crying, you were saying, I have no relation to her. I don't know her. I'm not close to her. And that was like, okay, they're not going to kill me if I don't show emotion here.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of like, in the back of Eumenes' mind. And he was like, man, if that's true, I need to apologize. and then the story ends with getting, I never said her name before, but Hieronymus' wife, whose name I did not write there.
The adoptive mother of Eumenes.
Yeah, and Telesilla, something like that. So she recounts her side of the story. And so she was against Hieronymus adopting the Scythian child. But
she thought it was kind of creepy that he didn't cry. She's like, what do you mean he didn't cry looking at his mother's dead body? That's really weird. I don't know if I want this kid.
Mm-hmm.
But then when she goes up to Eumenes, he's a little kid. He tugs at her, and she realizes he's crying now. And just instantly, motherly instinct kicks in, I would say.
Yeah. She kind of reluctantly turned to him when he tugged at her. It was like, oh, don't look.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so she embraces him, and that's the end of the story. So yeah.
Well, end of that.
That portion of it. Yeah, the portion that we read.
Yeah. Well, is that the end too? Before we read?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there might have been it ended with her on the table, and then Eumenes thinking, I should apologize.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. For some reason, I thought that there was more after, but yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. This story of striving for the truth, having your identity ripped out from under you. I mean, wow. I'd say that's some powerful stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to know that this was real life, I'm like, whoa.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't, like we were saying earlier, though, I think that a lot of the events of his life were fictionalized.
No, fair
it was just there's this general. We maybe know that he was originally a slave, but we don't really know that much about his life and the twists and turns it took.
All right.
So we're just gonna make it up.
Yeah, that's fair.
But at the same time, I don't actually know a lot either about because
the manga cites diary entries from him, but I'm not sure if those diary entries actually exist.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it says he was a native of Cardia. He was employed as a private secretary of Philip II of Macedonia, and after Philip's death by Alexander the Great. But doesn't say anything about him even being a slave or anything like that. So yeah, that really could have all been made up.
All right. Yeah.
But still, compelling story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, did you expect some of that to happen?
I mean, I could believe it. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe
Well, no,
not
no.
so
I
much.
mean, like, when you were reading it, like, when the two women are, like, the two random people in the town are, like, talking, oh, yeah, that slave got his, like, shackles finally undone.
You know, that's
he's
fair.
been being mistreated. And then that, like, cut to him just, like, at the massacre at the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's definitely a jaw drop moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a little bit like, okay, yeah, what's going on here? And, that is one thing that I feel like isn't, necessarily like only something that happens in manga, but it is like something I feel like I see a lot, where it's like, you were saying she went to like the beginning of volume 1 is kind of like, kind of nothing,
It's him as an adult,
yeah,
and meeting Aristotle.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of have a philosophical discussion.
Right. Yeah, I feel like the first volume and sometimes even the second volume really buries the lead in a lot of stories. Like when I looked back at the Wikipedia page and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is supposed to be about the general and secretary of Alexander the Great." Like that's not what this told me at all.
No.
Which isn't a bad thing, but it's also like, huh.
Yeah.
I really could have forgotten about that. I feel like that happens a lot when you read the beginning of a story and they're just like, yeah, we're not gonna, that's later. That's way, way later.
They do have, because this is supposed to be him as an adult kind of looking back on a lot of this. They do have narration parts where he goes, because people mistreated me, we're so quick to change when I went from, a master to a slave. They were so quick to start disrespecting me, so easily forgot how they used to, interact with me, that I don't trust people in the army.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's making relations to, his current personality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, I kind of... So, after he gets in the fight with his brother, he goes to tell his mom, and his mom does is slap him and walks away. When you understand that she knows that Eumenes is not her actual child, that makes so much more sense. There is no way, I don't think, that a mother would slap her child like that.
Maybe. No.
Someone in the right mind, I guess.
I see it as a sign, like you're saying, that she's never fully accepted him as her son.
There is some kind of bonding that did not go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I could definitely see, especially ancient times, although honestly I could pretty easily see it in modern times too, but especially in ancient times, and corporal punishment being more common and stuff like that. But it is kind of he is confused is the thing. If anything, he should know. Say
anything to him.
Yeah.
Just slap him.
And he should know his parents, he should know how they behave and his, normal, when he does something wrong, how they act.
Right.
But it's this is weird, and I'm bruised up too, and so why? What's the deal here? He's more bruised up. I won, but
yeah. It's kind of like
the older kids started it,
right. I'm trying to think of what I was gonna say. I don't remember. Yeah, right. Because most people don't change, in the sense that if they are who they were now, they were like that years before. So he would have been at this point in time, he would have been oh, that's how they react. And so I'm gonna respond in a I don't trust you kind of way. I'm gonna put up some kind of armor. He wouldn't be necessarily surprised.
I think more along the lines, it was such a defining moment of his life. Not necessarily that people don't change.
Yeah.
But he felt that, this really showed him how humans in general are, not just these people specifically.
Yeah.
He knows how it happened to so many people, everybody almost.
Yeah. Also, just to backtrack a little bit because I realized that we didn't actually talk about it when we were talking about what happens in the story. And I'll be brief though, but there is a moment before, you know, all the massacre stuff and that's all that happens when Eumenes and his brother are at school. They are having like a physical fitness test kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then some older kids, like basically they see a totally different kid being really good at like all of their athletic events, and they're like, okay, well we're gonna like
he's getting a big head.
Yeah, he's getting a
we're
big
older
head.
kids. We're better.
Yeah, and so they're
hazing
like,
pretty much.
Yeah, we'll show him boxing, and I don't remember the word for it, but it's basically the grappling that they already learned about in the younger year, and then plus boxing.
Yeah, so that was just an excuse to beat up this kid.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And Eumenes was part of that, and some other kid whose name I forget.
Yeah, another one of his friends, basically. But then, yeah, they're all like, oh, who's next? You know, and Eumenes is like, actually, I want to try.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, we can't beat this kid up. He's part of, like, a wealthy, important family. And they're like, let's go get his brother, though. If they beat each other up, that's okay.
Yeah. And his brother is very quick to be like, all right, I'm going to beat you up.
Yeah.
I kind of been wanting to do this, actually.
Yeah. And that's the moment when Eumenes takes inspiration from the dream.
Right.
Which, you know, of course, he later finds out is his mother. You know, her movements make him feel like he can move in that way, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that whole thing ends with his brother down on the ground and him beating him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just keeps going.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, he gave the sign that you should stop. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize that. And then later admits, he's like, where's the fun in that?
Yeah.
And just stop.
He did recognize and just kept beating him.
Yeah.
Which, that was one of the moments that later, when at the trial, when he thinks back to the understanding of a Scythian, of the cruelest, it's like, oh yeah, I was just beating him up.
Yeah.
Like, he was down.
Well, he really lets that label, like, define him. It's interesting. But I mean, everybody else defines him by that label, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's almost, I would think that he would almost wear it as a badge of honor because of how horribly the Greeks treated him. It's like, okay, I am a Scythian. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I don't think obviously his mom and the rest of his family didn't attack the, like, slavers as they were going by. They were the ones who were attacked. And so they responded with a large amount of violence because they were being cornered.
Yeah.
Does that make them cruel?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, yeah, they're all like, oh, it's so cruel that you were, you know, attacked.
So cruel. She killed 21 people.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Self-defense. You weren't gonna, it's not like you were like, okay, I give. I'm gonna back off now.
It wasn't like she went to their hometown and started killing everyone in Thrax.
Well, I'm not saying that Thrax necessarily was cruel either.
I mean, that it's a moral gray area.
Yeah.
It's that thing of, like, he was so mistreated, and they were like, this will put him in his place, and all it did was make him go, okay, I'll be the same.
He was too proud.
Yeah, I mean, and also, like, yeah, it's like when your freedom is literally, like, taken away, you know. It's like,
and that's the thing, right? He wanted to just leave the town.
Yeah,
go home.
Yeah,
and they literally just kept chasing him.
Yeah, he was like, open the gate, you know. He's saying it in, like, you know, basically a strained Greek because he only knows so many Greek words in the first place.
Oh, is that what? Okay, that has another context. That's funny.
Yeah,
or well, not funny, interesting.
But yeah, so, like, you know, but they were like, no, just kept fighting him and kept losing.
Like, man, you could have lived.
Yeah, so one guy, one guy, just let him go.
Man, but could they really have lived with themselves if they were just like, yeah, we'll let him go?
Well, they died otherwise.
Yeah.
So they didn't get to live.
That's fair. They didn't.
Bad choice. Yeah, but I did want to talk about I kind of felt like I had trouble connecting a little bit with Eumenes. I just like, I don't know, it was when, I felt a little bit when, his dad died. Like, I could tell, like, he was really upset, and, like, I felt that, but, like, everything else kind of just was like, even though he said that it was really hard for him becoming a slave and all of that, I didn't...
Do you feel like he got over it pretty quickly?
Yeah, I felt like he got over it pretty quickly.
Got the upper hand pretty quickly.
Uh-huh.
I was a little surprised at that.
But think about it. He's learned to not cry.
Yeah.
I do think the moments where he did cry, I found those really good. Like, even just the library scene where he really wants to go into the library, but he can't anymore.
Yeah. And
I can see how you might feel, Cody, that it was a little bit of it was a lot of things happening to him, and him kind of standing by going, whoa.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, I don't necessarily know, like, if this distinction is valid, but to me, I'm like, I can recognize, it's like, I can't really connect with him. But on a more, like, archetypal level of, oh, this is a person who went through the killing of his father, finding out his identity stripped from him, and falsely accused. Like, I can recognize that as, like, that is heavy stuff. Totally. But him as a person necessarily, I don't know if I can say that it was just that. Like, I feel like you could probably put in anybody, and the events would still.
Right. Yeah. I think. Yeah. My problem is he's a little bit too special. It's like
a little too good at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, I mean, yeah, they make a point towards the beginning, or the beginning of where we read, at least, where his father's like, you're not, the greatest, like, athletically, like in that also that's reinforced later at the athletic tests. He does well at running, but the coach or the teacher is all like, well, in battle you can't just run away, but
then he ends up getting, like, the upper hand in the fighting really quickly.
Exactly. Yeah.
I felt like that part was a little bit of betrayal of the promise of being like, yeah, you're really book smart, but not so much this other thing. Like you're saying, his dad in that section's like, Eumenes, you're special. He's like, what? Yeah. What are you talking about, Dad?
Yeah. And I think too, it's like what he was. You can see where his dad was coming from, where he's like, you're special. But I don't know if I really believed that he was, like, to me, when you say you're special, it's like, oh, you have a special ability. Like, but he just, I don't know, is it like that he picks things up quicker than most? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's kind of what he means. But also, like, I think his dad was kind of deluded a little bit, like, I'm like, first of all, like, I mean, if we're like now, like, obviously we have modern understandings of stuff, but if you don't cry at your mom's, like, like, dead body, like, that's like sociopath, like, like, that's scary, that's bad thing.
But the section we read where he talks about the Scythians to his friend group, and they're all like, oh my god, that's disgusting, because it talks about, like, cannibalism and all that.
Oh yeah, that was
and he was just like, isn't that interesting? And they're like, what the heck, why would you tell us this?
I mean, honestly,
while we're eating, they were having lunch together.
Yeah.
As a reader reading it, you are like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really messed up, but
it was an intriguing tale where it's like he was totally fine with it. He pretended, and then it wasn't.
It was fine till it wasn't.
Yeah.
Do you think that story is actually how the Scythians came to be? Because he tells that story as this is how the Scythians came to be known as the proudest, bravest, and cruelest people in the world.
It's hard to verify stuff like that, right? Like, the beginning is always something that's going to be mythologized.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's an actual historical story that's told as their beginnings, I don't even know that. I feel like it's not.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, too, if I had to guess, I think that this is probably, it was another creation for this story.
Gotcha.
It's pretty hard to forget.
Yeah.
It's like burned in my mind.
But yeah, I can see what you mean, Cody, where he kind of is a sociopath, and that's hard to relate to. Like, even him looking at the body of Thrax.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And also, I wasn't really meaning to call him a sociopath necessarily. Really, what I was trying to say is that the dad was, like, just kind of wrong about him, but in, like, you know, it just...
Oh, man. Maybe that's something he wants, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, in that kind of a world, that might be extremely useful.
Yeah, no, I think...
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's... You're right. I think there is something to be said for, like, I can, the creation of mythology, essentially. You know, it's like, I can mythologize my own son and make him a hero, you know, with this, like, origin that is, like, you know, he is not... Because, I mean, like, think about it. It's like, that's lots of, like, I mean, Hercules grows up not knowing he is the son of Zeus. Oedipus, you know, obviously is a tragedy, but he doesn't know about his parental origins. You know, it's all this stuff that's like, I mean, that's superheroes, you know, to it. Not knowing your true origins until later. So yeah, I think that he is doing a good job of creating his son to be special, and that's why we see he is good at picking out small details. And I guess the fighting is kind of like, that's where it gets, like, you know, like you said, Shweta, it's like, it's kind of a betrayal of what it's supposed to be, because it's just like, oh, he just remembers how his mom fought, I guess, and that's like, and he is Scythian, so it's like, he's just good at fighting, and it's like, well, that...
Y'all are just jealous.
Yeah.
I liked the majority of it, but I don't super care for that part. As far as his characterization.
Yeah.
Because, you know, even though we keep going back to the fact that he, like, saw his mom's body and was, like, pretty chill with it, in actuality, you know, we get to see that he feels bad about that. He's like, you know, I don't know how I felt at that moment, but obviously she's my mother. Like, I cared about her. You know, he cries thinking back on, like, her dead body at times.
You know what's so...
And he cried, like, immediately after when he was brought to that new family.
Yeah, and that's what I felt like, you know, they were... That's why I didn't mean to say that he was a sociopath earlier, because, like, yeah, it seems pretty clear that it was maybe, like... And that's the other thing, too, where it's like, okay, well, you know, even then, he was, like, you know, quote-unquote smart enough to be accepted into this family.
He had strong enough self-preservation skills to be able to recognize that. I think even Chera and the slave's interpretation of it feels a little silly.
Yeah.
You were such a smart child. You knew.
I don't know. I think that's very plausible, to be honest. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think that children can pick things up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and so that's why I'm like,
you're not wrong. He
could have picked it up. I just feel like the way he explained it was very elaborate. Of like,
it pulls more from, like, you know, basically it's trying to make sense of his current ability to pick out details rather than just be like, well, any kid could have, you know.
That's fair.
It's just like, you know,
he could have
you
literally
are
been
special
in so
still.
much shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's, like, I was just thinking about this. It's like, this is fascinating to me, because at the end of the story, when after Charon shared what happened, he thinks back to how he was in that moment where he was like, I don't know this woman. if you take Charon's words as truth, because certainly Eumenes thinks that. If like you take that as truth, it's like he recognizes like, oh, like to me it read like, oh, I kind of sinned, like I lied, like gave a false witness because it was like this woman isn't my, like I don't know this woman, right? And so
it's a betrayal. It's
a
betrayal to the people he cares about.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's just fascinating that he would like he wouldn't articulate it that way, obviously, but like to me, I'm like I read that and
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, though, I liked this. I also felt like there was some pacing issues for me where I was just like, even though I was like interested and engaged, I was just kind of like, I want to put this down a little bit, at the same time. And maybe I think that kind of has to do with kind of what I was saying earlier too, of that I didn't really know where this was supposed to be going, It's like the price of being...
I don't think starting from the chapter 1 would have solved that.
No, I don't think so either, and that's not what I'm saying. But I think the price of being potentially surprised is not knowing what lies ahead either, where you're just kind of like, okay, is this just about a wealthy Greek boy? And then it's like, oh, no, we're doing something different. And it's like, he's maybe going to be like, attacked or like maybe this enslaved person is going to kidnap him, maybe that's where we're going. And it's like, no, he's fine. All right. Oh, his dad's going to be murdered. So it's going to be like this like kind of political thriller, it's like, no.
I don't think they go back to his dad's death that much.
Yeah.
I get this feeling that they're not going to address the fact that it's super clear. It's not.
No, yeah. The turning point is him becoming a slave and then it says he escapes actually, but yeah, that is the turning point. I don't think they ever go back for justice in that realm. Hecates, is that his name?
Hecatus or something.
Hecatus. He gets away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, just like, so I was surprised by like a lot of things, but at the same time, it was just like, okay, what is this story though? What should I expect?
There's going to be a certain payoff, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That part, the part with the fighting, and then the part with whether he, continues on as a slave or not, it does feel a little irregular.
Yeah.
Man, I really do love the emotional beats of the story.
Yeah. That's interesting you guys say that, because, like, for me reading it, I never asked myself, where is this going? What is the story trying to... Like, what is the story that is being told? I
was pretty entranced by the story.
Right. Like, I was just... riding the wave, basically. And so,
yeah, I could, so to kind of show my cards a little bit fully, I liked the story, but also it was like kind of I liked it enough, but I wasn't super interested in reading more, but at the same time, I could see that just like kind of being like my general like headspace, like maybe I think that there was enough good here that maybe I need to give it another chance.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
But overall I was kind of just like middle to sour on it, just kind of like
enough.
meh.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I don't know how much I enjoyed the story all that much, to be honest. Like I think that I resonated with it on an archetype level. And that is interesting to me. But not so much the individual. Do
you want to expand on that a little bit? Because you mentioned archetype, and I felt like I understood what you meant. But
yeah. So when I'm saying archetype, I mean this is about a person who went through this thing, who went through this thing, who went through this thing.
Yeah, like I mean a kind of standard told story.
Yeah. But that I think there's a delineation with the like resonating with the individual. You know, like let's take, you know, like Spider-Man for instance, right?
Sure.
It's like you can resonate with Peter Parker, right? You aren't just gonna swap Peter Parker out with Tony Stark and then have it be the same.
Right.
Whereas, so like that's where I was like, I resonate with Peter Parker on an individual level, not just on an archetypal level. You see what I mean?
Swapping Peter Parker out for other Peter Parkers.
So
I think, let me try to break this down a little bit. So yeah, you're saying that like in this story, in history, history spelled with IE, the story, not
yes,
not literal history. You know, you are connecting with the broad strokes of the plot, basically.
Yeah.
You know, but not as much with the characterization of Eumenes.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Which, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Something, because, like, thinking about archetypes is, like, you know, that is specifically related to the character. So it does have to be a little bit about his characterization, but not necessarily his personality as a character, but more about the broad strokes of his character, which is being quick-witted and strong when he needs to be.
Gotcha. I still wouldn't say that I necessarily like resonated like with him on those kind of things. Yeah. Like I would simply just say it's like think of this as like a cutout, everything surrounding like the plot points. Right. I resonated with that.
Yeah.
That spoke to me.
Yeah, and speaking of like mythology, and this is probably also why I was thinking like Norse stuff earlier too, is like, you know, it is very reminiscent of the like Odin Loki, you know, the going in on essentially a war party. I mean, like different but same, you know, and then slaughtering the people and then taking the sun and as your own and keeping the truth from him.
Yeah. Oh, so you mean specifically like the movie?
I mean, that's part of mythological story too.
Yeah. Oh, is that like the actual story of Odin and Thor?
Yeah, of Odin and Loki.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought that was just Marvel.
The beginning of the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. I got you.
Backstory, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so yeah, that's you know, similar.
Can't go wrong with it.
Right. Well, so I think about mythology, and it's like those are archetypes in a sense.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's not, you know, you can go even further defining the character by their own, like, I would say like their thoughts and emotions, right? It's like,
yeah,
that's another level of the character. And that's where I didn't connect with.
Right.
Eumenes or Eumenes.
Totally.
Yeah. I think if you like a character, you'd be willing to see them in like a lot of different situations. And I don't know what Eumenes would do in a lot of different situations. Because he's just kind of good at things.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah,
I can see how it can be fun though to like read something where the character's just gonna like come up with some creative way to solve it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm super curious if it actually gets into like military politics and stuff. That's the part where I would get interested. But I just don't. I really liked this backstory, and I didn't care about him in the beginning chapters, super beginning ones where he's just an adult kind of milling around.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it does sound boring and almost like it, continues to just bury the lead, even if it does, like, you know, have him as an adult and, like, says, like, oh, yeah, and the secretary to Alexander the Great. Like, even...
Eventually.
Huh?
Eventually.
Eventually?
Eventually he's going to be the secretary to Alexander the
Great.
Great.
Well, yeah, no, but...
He's not...
Is he not...
I know, that's the thing, though, of, like, the fact that it's eventually going to happen. Just look forward to it, guys.
Well, yeah, no...
So he's not portrayed in the beginning as the secretary already? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Sitting on the shore, trying to come up with a way of propelling a boat.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I guess I had assumed based on how you described it that the beginning is essentially the end, you know.
No, it's in the middle kind of. It is the actual beginning of the story in the sense of, we meet this adult man and he's going back to his hometown after, I assume, probably getting out of a situation that we're going to see later.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's kind of, there's no stakes, right?
Yeah.
At least not so far. And of course he proved himself really capable by tricking his way into the city again. And so some dubious looking merchant's like, I want to hire you. Join my crew.
Well, that's funny. Hey, did you know that I was once a citizen of this here city?
Yeah, keyword once.
I would bury the lead there.
Yeah. Anyway, though, we should talk about the art. Yeah. I felt like this was really delicately penciled and inked, but mostly just you can tell that it was really careful in a lot of ways.
It's like early 2000s style art for sure, and so that makes me nostalgic, and I liked it. After seeing the style, it made me want to read Parasite, because I was like, if Parasite's in the same style, that's not to say I liked the style a ton, but I think it worked pretty good for this typical story setup.
Yeah.
I think so. In general, like the art. I think I really like the art when it's more like when he's drawing maybe like a still like that. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like it's typically with like either buildings or carts where it's like things look more defined, I guess, or like maybe more character. It's like darker. There's more shadows.
Yeah. There's I liked well, actually, I guess not to say that I don't like that, but I realized that what I liked is different is all.
Okay.
But there's a splash, a 2-page splash, that's like in the market right before like the big massacre and stuff, and it's just like, the market, and it's active and fun and people are walking around and stuff, and I was like, that looks really sharp and crisp, just like, even like, I'm kind of drawing it from memory a little bit. I don't have it in front of me right now, but like they didn't even like put a lot of background detail. It was kind of like a lot of just black ink on white, without any texture around them. But still, it was like, wow, this feels like a very real, like kind of lived in world. Yeah. Despite that.
And I would say when they added that texture, that's when it was like, oh, I really like that.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, any of the still moments where like this is an important panel, you could tell the level of detail really increased, and those are particularly nice. Of course, very striking.
Yeah,
as they should be.
Yeah, I felt like the art also in the boxing scene was quite nice.
Okay.
I think the time when the art, I didn't super like the way the dream is portrayed. Like the way the scratchiness of it.
The fuzzy, because it's like a blurred memory.
It's supposed to be fuzzy, but I just felt like it didn't quite feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but also
it felt like a dip in quality, even though I know it's just a different style that's supposed to be portraying more of a flashback.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because the boxing scene's really good. So, in comparison.
I don't have the boxing scene firmly in my mind right now.
Yeah, so. It would have maybe been nice if, like, Fuzzy when he's like asleep, and then like maybe starting to grow in sharpness when he's thinking about it when he's awake, because you do actually notice it gets more detailed when Chiron he starts telling the story over to Eumenes.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, you're filling in the details, and this isn't just some dream; it's a memory. I remember now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, also like the moment where he's like, she wouldn't stop looking at me. That was really intense in a good way.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel that with the rest of the scene before that.
Oh, okay.
Even when he's sitting down to like stare at her dead body, I was like, oof, it's very gross looking in the right way.
Yeah. It's interesting, like that the body was drawn with a lot of detail, but everything else was like not. There's no texture to other stuff.
Yeah.
I was gonna say so the part where he learns that he's not Hieronymus' father or Hieronymus' son, and it's like his whole world shook, and the way that they drew that I really like that.
Yeah, that was actually quite cool. Yeah, that was a cool effect. Just like almost like a double layer drawing. Like a classic 3D. If it was in color kind of thing, where it's like things are offset from each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really gave that effect of like, oh, everything, we're in an earthquake.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just totally disoriented. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Pretty complimentary art then.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like it was really good art. But yeah, I just wish that at times that that I wanted to get to know, the characters a little bit more, it's just kind of, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I reread this section so many times. I think I just, in the end, it really is what Talon said, where I really liked the standard, get caught up in a plot about your father's death and the betrayal of your identity.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's going to continue on in a way that's interesting along those lines.
Yeah. Fair. And it does continue on for quite a while.
Many years.
Yeah.
11 volumes ain't much.
Yeah. What'd you say?
It's 11 volumes.
Yeah.
It ain't a crazy amount of
That's true.
When you consider how much time, like how you just flew through, what was it, 12 chapters?
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, 1.5 volumes.
Right.
So yeah, that is a sizable amount of 11.
But it was like this read really quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with that.
Gotcha. I was just clarifying.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, and Parasite is 10 volumes for kind of context too. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, this is still ongoing, but close to finishing. Parasite finished in 10.
Gotcha. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think that's, unless there's any final thoughts, that's all we have for today. Thank you for listening. This has been the Comic Panel. I'm Cody.
I'm Talon.
And I'm Shawenta.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to this channel as it helps us out on the YouTube algorithms and getting us seen by more and more people. You can also reach out to us with any thoughts you have on the things we talk about on Twitter at TheComicPanel1 and on Instagram and Facebook at TheComicPanel. Also, if you want to leave a comment, please do. Let us continue the conversation.